All right, Shayna Rose, here we go again.
Yeah, we're back.
Let's talk today about one of what I would say like the most buzzy topics in this industry. Anytime you've talked about this, had an event, done a coaching call about pricing models, everyone's always curious, and it's one that gets everybody RSVP'd. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear from you about all the different pricing models in this industry and the holes and the gaps that you've found in each, because you have your own way of doing it, your own special sauce. But let's start first with where these designers probably are right now and how they're probably selling and pricing their jobs. And I'm going to give you just a couple minutes on each to rant your pros and cons and kind of list them in order of your least favorite pricing model to favorite. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready for it.
Okay. Least favorite way that you see designers pricing and closing their jobs would be?
Square foot.
Okay. Talk to me about this price per square foot pricing model. Any pros, even though it's last on the list, and probably more importantly, the cons.
Super fast, quick, and easy to throw a price at someone and close.
Okay.
Pro. Con. What the hell are you even doing in the project? Like, where is this number being generated from? Like, how many bathrooms are in there? Because a bathroom, the quantity of bathrooms is going to increase your design time. So there are just so many unknown variables. I just simply cannot get on board with a square foot price. However, under using it as a baseline and understanding on average around where things can come out at to start a conversation, I'm okay with. Just not using it as the primary tool to actually price the project and close it into the contract.
Right. If you're using it to give like a ballpark number, that's what you're saying, like more at discovery.
Yeah. Like if you know your data, and you have data to point back at and you can generalize and make some averages, you'll probably learn that projects can execute in a variable swing of 30%. People are their own creatures. They have different needs throughout the process. Their ability to make decisions is variable. The team at which is hired to help execute the project is variable. The county, if we're doing construction in permits are variable. There is just so many variables that simplifying variables sound like my 3-year-old daughter who's like starting to talk about variables. So many variables and unknowns and uncontrollables. Like I just can't. Pricing is about protection, and it's always about knowing that I am going to be profiting X amount off of this hour paying someone else. We want that much level of control.
Right.
And there's just no strategy. It's simple, it's quick, it's easy, it's great. Getting started, especially with a learning curve, great way to start, but not where we end by any means.
Love it. Okay. Next to least favorite. How do you say that? Next to least favorite?
Percentage-based model.
Okay. Talk to me about
Very
that.
Similar to the square foot. We're just pulling money off of a different flat number, ultimately. Variable. And also, what like just simply doesn't make sense again. Like, where are we at, right? Like, is the home a dump? Are we converting? Is it a 300,000 square foot house? We're going to convert to a $1.2 million house. There's just so much nonsense, I feel like, inside of that. And also, how many times do clients want a fraction of a design? So how the heck does that work? Like, I'm actually going to be, bringing over most of the stuff for the bedrooms. I just need like maybe, new nightstands and a dresser. But I do need the full space in the living room. Like, what happens when the project is not cut and dry? And that also is the same thing for the square foot. Not cut and dry. Like, you get stuck, then you're just making more stuff up, basically being like, reduce this by 500, like, And I get on calls with people like, where did that come from? I don't know. Like I'm
Right.
thinking like this will be like 7-hour reduction and calculate that. Okay. But
Right.
now you're calculating hours in a square foot model that doesn't have hours involved. And usually we learn from the data that what you're thinking that you're making on an hourly rate is nowhere near what you're making.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us how you really feel.
That's
And
how I really feel.
designers, if you're doing percentage based or price per square foot and now you're at a high frequency, don't worry. There are probably boundaries you could put in your contract and implement short term, but keep your mind open through the rest of this conversation to see if there's a pricing model that better serves you.
Yeah. I would say if
spoiler, there is.
Yeah. If you're there and you're like close to bridging the gap, usually the fastest, easy solve in those like percentage square foot models is a timeline so that you have an expiration date on that contract. Usually where things go sideways is when the schedule doesn't align or there's delays and then you get dragged along. The never ending project. Yeah. And then you just can't stand it and the money's over. You're waiting for a specific point to arrive to collect the next bucket of money. Then cash flow becomes stressful. But when you're just by yourself, you don't have all the stressors, all the money goes to you. That learning curve is just hitting to yourself. I would say you just put a termination date in that contract so they know after this date, the project is over. It doesn't matter if it's unfinished or what, and put a cost something to that, to continue on the project and working with you.
Yep. And a cost that will make it fulfilling for you because there's nothing worse than towards the end of that never ending project, you just feel like you're getting taken advantage of. That's actually not the case if the boundaries weren't there for you to just price it in a way that you'll feel great about showing up again because it's worth your time.
Totally.
Okay. Third on the list, I feel like now on the spectrum, we're getting closer to like, it's not awful. There's benefits to this, but it's just not fully there yet. What's the next pricing model?
Happy for it if you don't have a team and you have not much overhead. That's where I'm like, okay, but just put some boundaries in there. Middle ground, I would say, is the hourly. Smack dab in the middle is the hourly. I think it's harder to sell hourly without boundaries. I think that clients who I meet who are selling this, retention isn't as high as it could be because it's unexpected to a client. Now, of course, there's always the gems of clients where, money doesn't really matter and it's the value of the service and what you're bringing to the table. That's always a dream, but not many, and really in terms of percentage of population, not many we're working with. Right. And even those people at the highest tier, billionaires, have financial money managers where that ain't working for them. Right. They are controlling money. It's their job to make sure that these people do not get taken advantage of, and just pitching an hourly service is really not going to work, or they're going to question and want a very detailed log report and question every little thing you're doing.
Yep. And even thinking about it from a marketing perspective or in discovery, those clients are going to ask you to do way more before they've spent $1 for you. They're going to want to get some kind of estimation or expectation or whatever it is. And it's just not going to be as seamless as it could be from new inquiry to paid to get on your schedule for a consultation or for client intake, which we're going to talk about. Yeah. But I think that's a sticking point where you're going to end up spending time that no one's paying for.
Yeah. And, pros of it is we've controlled profitability, right? Love that side of it. And when people come, they're like, I'm like, great. And if it's working for them, I'm like, let's not change it, right? If you're in that hourly approach and you want to delegate, I'm happy. And I'm a big person. Like, if it's working, we do not need to change it. If you feel like there's challengings happening, then I'm going to offer you a solution to enhance that hourly, approach, which is through estimating the hours of a project. And we're kind of jumping past my next, option.
Well, let's
in
not.
Terms of,
Don't jump. What's your next option? Let's talk about it.
Next, well, it's well, now I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I put flat fee next over hourly, but I have to put a contingency with this. The only reason that I'm putting hourly in the middle of this is if you're selling flat fee with a calculated hourly approach with very crystal clear boundaries and management. I think that's a
big ask, because I think most designers that we see who really say like, yes, my model is flat fee, that's not really what they're talking about. So put a little asterisk on it. Maybe these are switched in
it
order.
depends on how you're doing your flat fee would determine whether you're in spot 3 or in spot 4. So, flat fee, I want to have a conversation about how I really say that the way in which I coach and the pricing model in which I advocate, that I want to talk about them together.
Great,
because I don't think one outweighs realistically the other. It really is based upon how the designer's brain works, how they want their client experience to feel. Do they want a very high touch, high approach, high communicative, concierge situation? Or do they want to simplify the communication and reporting to the client and only align with them at certain stopping points in the project? So all of the back end and all of what needs to happen to control the project, the hours, the data is all the same. It's how we're positioning the sale to the client, and it's how the internal reporting system, the internal reporting system is consistent. It's the reporting to the client that is differential. So if you're selling a flat fee and you're not using a tool to calculate hours to create your flat fee, and you're not managing or establishing client boundaries, and you are sprinkling in scope and allowing their revisions to go countless and taking extra meetings and not even tracking that, then you're at spot number 3 in my mind.
You just
hourly
moved down the
better.
ladder just a little bit, but still with love.
Yeah.
No, and if you're not tracking after the fact your data to make sure that your next flat fee is iterated based on what you've learned, down the ladder just a bit, but we still love you.
Yeah. And again, it matters where you are in your journey. So it's all good. It really is where I really harp on it is when we're ready to delegate and start paying out, because I'm so passionate. And that's why the technology is built the way it is, to ensure that what you pay out, you're making money on. I am highly, I would prefer.
The only way it's a growth model.
Well, and it's also how I know in a genuine partnership that it's a strong partnership, because every hour you're going to pay for, you're making whatever that differential is, $92 an hour off of. Now, when the business is busy and you need to pay more, it's not a high frequency situation. It's great, I'm busy. And now, because I need to spend and buy 10 extra hours in my week, I just made an extra $900 this week. Great. $920. Awesome. And now you connect people to money makers for you. Takes time to get there, and establishing the foundation. And of course, there's pockets in the business you're not going to be able to.
And you're going to invest back in your business and have tasks that maybe aren't billable, but that's baked into your consistency. And it all comes back to controlling the profitability.
Right. And that leads into what we do advocate you doing in your pricing model.
Yeah. Which we didn't say though. We only knocked it down the ladder just a little bit. But we didn't say pro of the flat fee is in the sale. People love having a ticket price to agree to. It is an easy way to sell. So when you are that solo, when you don't have to worry that much about the delegation yet, there are pros. I just wanted to make sure they heard that too.
Totally. Now, what we do advocate, and again, I don't care how you position the sale to the client, but I think we can talk about, our pricing tool, how I workshop creating that pricing tool, and then how you really can customize it to how you want to sell to a client, and then how it really becomes about the contract and your closing call to establish and clarify expectations, and then lands you with the management and the part that no one wants to do and is the worst part of it, which is why you're not going to do this pricing model until you have a team, because you need a team to manage this pricing model. But if we're going to be a business owner and we're going to need a team and we're going to want to grow, then this is the nucleus transition point. And this is where you have support, right? So ultimately, we are clarifying the process. Simple. We go through the conceptual phase. We go through the detailed design phase. If you have a fourth phase in terms of revision of design, I really simplify them into 3. And then we go into your project management or design management phase. Oftentimes people feel like they don't have a process. You do, but I arrive on that call with a process laid out. So it's an easier workshop. And if you want to adjust your process, we talk about the pros and cons of why and when, because also
add a step here because this is how I handle that. Like, yes, totally customizable, but don't worry, you're not looking at a blank screen because that's the most paralyzing thing when you're trying to start something.
Yeah, we're shortcutting. We're on a screen share. Yeah. We have this spreadsheet up, good to go. We're talking through the process first. Then we're going backwards, and I already have estimated our allocations based on data I already have. So we don't have to be paralyzed by that, but we kind of review that, edit, adjust that. Everyone is using some different softwares, you know, whether you're rendering in Chief or whether you're going to be rendering in V-Ray, that estimated hour allocation is going to be a differential. Whether you're clipping and using a house generated board or you're building out elaborate Canva boards, that time is going to be a differential. But we look at those things together and we put our allocations. We create this tool to be very versatile. So it's not based on room or any kind of large bucket.
Have you ever met a designer who said, no, this doesn't work for me for XYZ reason? Like, is there any hang up that you found that this doesn't work for?
Not at all. Most people will come and be like, this is what I know I've had to do, but my brain hasn't been able to dump the process like this, you know, and because that process is dumped for them, it's easy for us, you know, in 2 hours, we knock it out. We knock out process. The next 2-hour call, we review that process again because we're talking through it. Usually a week has gone by. Your brain has had time to think on it. And I'm re-talking you through what we set. And then things are like, and I'm like, well, what about the shaded elevation? Are you doing anything here? Little sprinkles come up. And then we shift over to focusing on estimation of time. The way we're doing that so that you can price anything, right, is to make sure you're coding this thing by an item count, boards, quantity of rooms, quantity of concepts, right? We really clarify and make it so if a client wanted to do a full kitchen renovation, a fraction of a bathroom renovation by just replacing the vanity and the lighting, they wanted to do flooring and paint through the whole house, and they needed a couple things of furniture. Maybe one room needed a space plan, but the other room, you're like, it's a bed. I don't need to do space plan. I don't do any drawings. Freaking king bed is a king bed. Just to replace it, you're going to be able to come into this tool. 4 items, 4 boards. I'm going to do 2 concepts for the kitchen. I'm going to layer in 1 rendering for the kitchen with 2 extra views. We are detailing, plugging in, and then boom, we go to a proposal summary page that is coded to price and close in the way that you want to close. So we can do this one of 2 ways. We can either do this in a design fee range, which really is hourly with boundaries. It's solving the problem of the issue with hourly is clients want to put their arms around the scope and just understand what it could cost, right? So it does that for them. It's a very honest approach. It's a very detailed approach. You're collecting, usually depending on the size of the project, I collect the minimum fee up front. This is usually what shocks the crap out of people when I close their first jobs for them is like, you know, pay drill, I'll never forget. 30,000, you know, in that first close. So the largest sum of money he's ever collected up front. It's like, yeah, get it up front. You're going to go through this project in like 8 weeks. You know, like, let's go. If they don't have it up front, I'm concerned. If it's a very long project and, you know, Paul, I think I closed $99,000 deal. We're not asking for $99,000 up front. We're going to break that apart because that project is going to have a very long timeline. We want to feed the business anyway. We don't want to get stuck at tax season that we have depending on your, you know, finances and how your accounting's going, you know, and you don't want to be paying on that if it's unused.
How customizable this really is. Like, yes, it is a system all put in place, a spreadsheet ready for you to add your magic to, but it's so living and breathing that it can work for every designer.
Yeah. So in this
project
design
scope, more importantly.
So in this design fee range, you're basically explaining the process, what's included in the scope. There's a level of negotiation that comes with it, which is awesome. We're not negotiating fees, we're negotiating deliverables. So we top down sell, throw in the kitchen sink. We show that higher number. And if it feels a little bit too high, then we're saying, you know what, the renderings, I threw them in there, but let me pull them out. We can know, I think that the visuals and the boards are going to be enough for you. I always like to put them in, but let's pull it out. And if we get to the point of the boards that you need to layer it back in, you can. And here is how that design fee range adjusts. Minimum quantity of hours. The way I explain that to a client is I want you to think about that nearly as a flat fee, because that is the minimum amount of time we need to take you through this process. But I am putting, depending on the type of project, a 20% or 30% swing of hours on top of that. So that's where the range comes from. I say it's a contingency, right? Just like you would renovate a home. I can price what I can see, but once I knock that wall, you've got to pre-approve a contingency, because if there's asbestos or mold behind there, we need to make sure that these funds are available. Well, humans are contingent. Everyone who says they're going to be easy and are decisive, usually they're low. Usually they're the worst ones. When they make that comment, you're like, oh, okay, we'll see. But they're contingent.
It puts a level of ownership on the client in terms of number of revisions, in terms of communicating promptly. And when that expectation is set up front, you'll have clients that are more enjoyable to work with and doing less of these things that normally drive you nuts and make you feel inside the project all the headaches.
Well, you use it to control your process, exactly like you said, and you kind of position it back to them, because if money matters and efficiency matters in the management of this retainer, and typically if you're going to do a design fee range, there is a higher level of communication with your client. And in this contingency, we want to clarify that the contingency is there for you to be a human and need a little bit more, either in the conceptual phase or in the revision or for your contractor, whatever the case may be. It's not for added scope. When added scope comes up, we have to clarify that contingency is for defined scope. And then we're communicating on a weekly basis and realigning and pointing back at the contract and pointing back at the pricing tool and offering clients A's and B's in the event that you are exceeding allocated time or there is added scope. Contractor is taking and absorbing a ton of your time beyond what you allocated. Here's what that follow-up looks like. Hey, Mrs. Smith, we're looking at the data, whatever the case may be, and we're noticing that the contractor is absorbing a lot more time that we had allocated. Option A, we continue as is. We manage everything on your behalf. You understand that there is risk at exceeding the highest level of hours we estimated for this project because they were requiring a lot more from us than an average contractor. Or option B, we stay inside the lines. You take over and contribute to this level of communication so that we're not exceeding what we allocated for the contractor and taking away from our install time or our procurement time or whatever the case may be. A's and B's. Before you pass go, realign the expectation. This is how we manage client emotions. So on the retainer fee, you do it that way in the management, or you use the pricing tool and you put your contingency in your flat fee. You clarify very clear boundaries for the deliverables and the meeting sets that you offer and the quantity of hours you factored in for revision. And you stop. Typically, when people are doing it this way, they're going to be pricing by phase, flat fees by phase. And you're realigning with them at the end of the phase. A lot of times after that conceptual phase, we've got added scope. Always happens. We're estimating those hours. We're adding them into the second flat fee payment. And we are still doing all the data tracking, all the hourlies, all the management. We just have a little less reporting to the client. And what I found is it just comes down to, I think, the designer themselves. If they're very, type A on top of things, they like that weekly report. If they're a little bit more, I don't know how to say all over the place.
Type B.
Type B, whatever that means. If you're type B, you might like that. It might feel a little bit more simplified for you to.
What these designers know about their ideal client, a lot of times they have a gut feel for
Yeah.
the clients that they're working with and what they'll appreciate. And so I think it's actually twofold in terms of what's going to benefit this designer for their style and their process and the client they know more intimately than we can.
Yeah, I would 100% agree for sure.
Yeah. So I personally think, tell me if you disagree, I think that the success of this pricing model, not in terms of controlling profitability, that's baked in, that's the whole point, that's, the whole entire point, but the success with the client, with this extra communication that you're talking about, with the reporting, so much of that success in the client experience comes down to the contract review meeting, the closing call. And that is a step a lot of designers are missing or even skipping, and either missing because they don't realize what it could do for them, or skipping intentionally. And I think that should be spoken about in this same conversation as part of this pricing tool, because this is what leads to the client satisfaction and clarity. So can you lay out that contract review meeting, closing call, and how that typically goes and how you run it?
Yeah. Pretty woman quote. Big mistake. Huge. Huge.
I love it.
Expectation. Evelyn said it in the beginning. Expectation is the key to happiness. By not having that closing call, you are basically assuming, which we know what that means, that all the informational documents you have sent have said everything that you want to say. And B, that they actually read everything. And let me just say, we have seen these 20-page welcome packets, and I am very nicely looking in your eyeballs like, do you think this person is reading all 20 pages?
Right.
Like, odds are no. They're reading a few, they're skimming through, they're looking for money, like, as a consumer, genuinely, if I like you, and it's kicked off from that meeting, then I am just looking for how much it costs. Who has really read? I mean, I've gotten better. I will say I have gotten better in the process of actually reading contracts. Pain point.
Been burned one too many
Yeah,
times.
exactly.
Growth
So
markers,
contracts
people.
we read now. But I mean, the reality is many people just don't, how many terms of service have you clicked in your life where you're like, just get me past to the next screen, this is who they are.
When they make you actually scroll to the bottom and you're like, oh my God, why would you do
Yeah,
this to
like
me?
what? Like you're not even requiring the quantity of minutes it would take for me to read this thing. Dumb. But your clients are doing the same thing. So you cannot, even with all the AI and the technology and everything out there, you cannot remove yourself entirely and create such a streamlined process where you don't have this human connection and also your moment to really align the expectations and also negotiate if need be. Not negotiate your rates, negotiate the level of service and offerings. And here's how I feel about that closing process, right? So, ultimately you get your free discovery. Everyone should be closed to an intake, right? I don't even like to call it a consult because that feels like one meeting. An intake is a process inclusive of a 2-part meeting. Designer goes to the house or reviews design. You pitch your ideas, you flood them and excite them about your talent and your skill. You come back to office.
Inspiration for them.
Yeah. We're not scared to give them ideas,
Right.
And if they take your ideas and run with them, they're not your client to begin with. And B, at least you got compensated for your time. Okay.
Amen.
So we take money for that. We're driving, we're giving time either virtually as well. We get them excited. You also are clarifying the scope to yourself. You're getting organized, suggested furnishing list, what material you need to have sourced, some outside concepts that you're thinking of, putting into the project. You come back to the office, you plop it into your pricing tool, which is going to really take you 20 minutes, honestly, once your tool is done, and you can prep your contract, assuming the close. That's great. We get on the closing call. We re-review the process. We overview the price. We negotiate, if need be, the level of service live on the call because your pricing tool can do this and make you look that good. And then we review the contract terms and services. So there's no questions there. We're clarifying purchasing terms. We're clarifying receivers, management, all those really crazy uncontrollables that come at that time of purchase, and doing a full review. So after that call, there are no questions, right?
Right.
The only thing that client may be doing after that closing call, because you've already aligned the level of service, is there might be looking at your suggested furnishing list, because we're guiding them to and say, reminder, this is suggested, but we like to put boundaries on this as well. Please feel free to go mark up this list. And simply, if you would never buy an area rug at $8,000, let us know. This is all suggested. It's not set in stone until we sign off on all the space plans, which solidifies our shopping list. So we have some time in this, but we definitely want to know where your headspace is at. And based off the labels you've told us that you typically shop at, and you've wanted to go either above or stay at that level, here is everything that my brain is envisioning inside. And until we bring it to the paper and start the project, it's not firm.
Right.
But reality is that's all they're really marking up to sign and send back over to you.
It's just so crystal clear now for the client. And when you were saying that, sample email to Mrs. Smith about, I could feel potentially a little bit of pushback from a designer that's like, my client doesn't know all those details, or like, that seems like, but it all comes from this closing call, because it has all been laid out in a very bite-sized way, exactly what these expectations can be, so that a level of communication like that is so buttoned up and expected throughout this process that you're going to have a very educated client who also pushes back less throughout.
Yeah. And I lay it on thick in those calls, and I would say that's kind of the beauty. If we're working together, I always advocate I close your first couple calls with you, just because it's new. You can see how I go through it and do it. But sometimes people just feel really uncomfortable. Sales is not their strength. And I kind of stay sticky in there forever.
Yeah.
Right. And the psychology also of a team, they're seeing different people, and now it's not just you as the business, it's an actual business. So if you're in a place where people are trying to negotiate your actual rate, your hourly rate, or however you're selling, that actually stops, because they know that you're a business inside of that. And then we're leaning on, there are challenges in full service. You got a purchase order list here of 75 items. It's not really a matter of if everything's going to come in perfect, like something's coming in damaged, and this is how that's going to go down. And you're going to get really excited. And then there might be delays, like all different times of the year have different situations to position. Just had a closing call, a couple weeks ago, where the client was asking the designer if they can complete before Christmas. And I was just like, let me be realistic here. We can put a rush on this. It's going to cost overtime hours, and we can put that push. Even still, everything's not going to arrive on time. The reality of the situation is it's going to be after the holidays. You have shipping issues. You have people who are taking time off. You have things that are closing. You have all the other holidays that even come before December, the end of the year from this point on. It's also about being really real with your clients. And then she's like, oh, yeah, that's pretty ridiculous for me to ask. It totally makes sense. I don't want to put a rush on it. It's all good. Now we've taken the pressure off, as opposed to being a people pleaser. So it's another thing that when it's your job, and I always had an issue with this as well. It's so funny, because I probably, even though I love sales, I was always a pleaser. So you build that relationship, you want to please. When it's not my job, not my project, it's like so funny. I love doing them, because the harsh truths come out. It is what it is. And now what I'm learning for someone who we close is I'm actually going to do a second part close with the client right before they place the order. Because what happens is every expectation we've set, it's a lot for anyone. First of all, it's a lot for a team, onboarding a team member to learn your process. If you think in a 30-minute closing call, your client has totally going to remember everything that you said to them and the challenges of the process. 3 months later, they're not, or it's a new build a year later, they're not. So having that secondary high level touch point to review purchasing, I think, is a big solve for a lot of people. It's new for us to integrate, but I really do think that the peak emotional challenges with clients come from order placement and beyond. And having that human touch point with them to remind them of those challenges, remind them that you're on their team. You are their advocate. You are the middleman. You are here to communicate at any point with a contractor. You want to step in because too much time is accumulating. My contractor binder set is going to give you all the answers. You don't need me. I'm here to do it. But in the event it becomes all consuming, I have the tool here for you to succeed. and just really clarifying that you're not responsible for other vendors, damage, receivers, how things install, and reminder that all products are non-returnable and refundable. And if something comes in and it's catastrophic and you really don't like it, we will be your best advocate. But here's how that goes down. And here's the typical policies that are followed, and restocking fees and reshipment fees you're going to be responsible for. So I just want to restate, I don't own these products. I don't own the shipper. I don't own the installers. I am on your side. And that's helpful right before things hit the fan a little bit. We need to remind them that we're there in behalf of their best interest.
Yeah. And here's what I'll say, because I think it sounds like a lot to implement, which it is, but you go through it in such a streamlined way that I think it makes sense. And it actually happens quicker than people would probably think. But this is a unique selling proposition in this industry. Being so crystal clear, having such set expectations, having such a buttoned up process that you can do these deliverable negotiations in real time, and that your pricing is so well outlined for a client that there's really no question marks anymore in terms of how that works with the terms. This is not typical, I would say. It really, really showcases a strength. And I think designers will sometimes come to me like, I need everything to be so buttoned up. And their vision of doing that is making a really beautiful proposal that's well designed. And yes, we can do that too. We can make everything look expensive, but there is nothing more buttoned up to your client than a crystal clear process that you can explain down to the T and then follow so systematically that they are left without questions. Like that is that expensive feeling that people are looking to do digitally, or sometimes it really is that level of process and that human touch of explaining it beginning to end.
Yeah. The sends and the deliverables are enhancements to your conversation.
Totally.
They're not necessary. That's why I don't like to focus on them first. The first point of focus is the conversational journey and bringing them to price the job. How we take a free conversation and close everyone in a very simplified way, to requiring that initial intake to define the level of their service and scope. And that includes this in-home consult where you're going to hear all of my design ideas and I'm going to hear yours, and I'm going to get organized, and I'm going to price the level of service that I think aligns with you. We're going to review that. We're going to realign if we need to. And I'm going to educate you on how that process works once you sign, once you pay, and how I keep you in control along the way. And that's that process.
Yeah. And collecting that payment for what we're calling the client intake allows you to, it's another differentiator. It's another USP, because many designers feel like they have to take that first design consultation almost as an extended sales call. They're afraid to give value right away, or they're still, collecting all the information to even allow them to share ideas. When you know that you've collected and it's worth your time and your team's time to collect the plans or the photos, review ahead of time, show up, give value, I think it really changes that client's first experience. And we're just seeing that be very successful.
People are we're closing higher on the calls. And if I had $1 for every time a client said, this makes total sense. It's more than I thought, but it makes total sense. And I have interjected to be like, do we want to reduce something, right? If a rendering's there or some type of design deliverable that I think we could go without. No. Makes total sense. I just thought it was going to be a little bit lower, right? Making it make sense, the MIMSIT, make it make sense acronym really is what sales is all about. If it makes sense, they're going with it, right? You excite them about what you're offering. You explain the process and how we've arrived at that price and at that fee, and how you keep them in control along the way. And it will close. It will close. That's not the hard part. I always joke about this because people get stuck on the pricing model and defining this. It's like, the hard part is not closing the job. That's the easiest part. Once we line this up, the easy part is close. The harder part in the close, when we're closing with control, we're executing the project with control, is the time logs, the data tracking, the alignment of the contract, and
Staying
the management and
accountable to
alignment
it
with the
throughout.
client. That's the hard part, the ongoing. And those are things, you know, that you need to bake into your process 30 minutes a week for that management so that it is still billable to the project. We're still capitalizing on that, but that's that first level of defense. When you change your pricing model, you need an admin managing this for you.
Yeah.
And then it also creates a layer of defense for you. I always give the same example of like, you go into a retail store, you have a challenge with someone on the sales floor. The client is very emotional with that salesperson and are like, I need to speak to a manager, right? Salesperson walks back, tells the manager what happened. The manager has time to kind of strategize the situation for how they're going to handle it with the client. In that time, the client has likely simmered down, right, as well, because they've gotten their emotions out on that first person. And then the manager gets to step in, or the owner in this case gets to step in and resolve the situation. And the client is calmer and they feel like they're getting problems solved by that top tier. Now, I always joke around, like, your assistant may have done nothing wrong. You know, we can always lean to the fact that the assistant is just following process, but you create that shield of defense. You can offer a give to the client in that time while realigning the boundaries of the deal so that it doesn't happen again. And we press forward, right? That
Sometimes
process.
you just got to pass them on up. You know, and
Right.
if you're handling everything, there's no one to pass up to.
Right.
And having that admin allows them to get that satisfactory feeling of getting passed right on up and getting a little win.
Yeah, that operations admin really is an upsell, right? Projects that you close have a series of upsells inside them. Where the upsell lives might happen towards the end, or if you're doing it in phases, you know, in flat fees, upsells might happen within those phases. But the reality is that when you're a person of one, money, at least for me, was the hardest conversation. I hated it. I absolutely hated
Most
it because
designers do.
You're so focused on the relationship and the value. The money feels icky. And then you have people who are also wanting to like hang out. That's probably different for people, but at least in cities, you know, New York City, it's super like want to grab a drink. It's just easy to socialize there and walk out your door and 2 steps, you know, go get a drink with your client. So you have this relationship with people and maybe they've paid for something. Like it just starts to get convoluted and then you just don't address it, or you say yes to one little thing and it's like the kid jumping on the couch. Just you don't tell them that they can't jump on the couch, just keep jumping on the couch, you know? So in this instance, if they're adding scope, little scope here, little scope there, and you're just saying yes to everything and no one's stopping to align with them, that's why at the end of the project, you're feeling totally taken advantage of because you just felt icky to have the conversation about money and there was no process to manage the deal, which is what that admin and that retainer management is there to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap it up, like, let's just say good, better, best, everything in life, good, better, best. We'll take it, you know, where we can, even if you're in one of those, you know, position 1 through 4 pricing models that might not be the absolute ideal for protecting your profitability. There are still steps you can take towards that. And if you really are at a place where you're ready to feel the freedom that comes with that total control of profitability, this is the natural next step for you. And it comes alongside that really crystal clear closing process. And this is something, Shay, that you've implemented time and time again with the satisfaction and the relief that comes from that. Any last things you would want someone to know if they're like, is this the right time for me to do this?
Yeah, I would say, you know, the only flat package that we ever created, which is, of course, a flat package with boundaries of hours, but it's based off of the quantity of time I know we need to make this change in your business. But I would say, you know, come work with me on a 12-hour package. We will completely convert your pricing model to a way that makes sense for you based on your growth marker. We look at your contract, edit your contract. If you don't have a contract, we provide one and walk through that to make sure you're really buttoned up there. we really walk through and align the whole sales process and that initial discovery call conversation to point you to that first close. And certain people, hopefully we get through that efficiently enough that I like to close your first couple opportunities with you. So if you're initially in the beginning or you're close to building a bridge towards delegation, I would say, and you're not ready to make like a year commitment of any kind, then that's where you start. Grab that package. Let's just focus on that. You'll have a full understanding of a trigger point that's going to swing that pricing model change, whatever that means for you through that growth marker. Unless you are ready to be consistent, then that ties into so much other stuff, which is going to be another conversation. But once we outline that, then we talk about all the informational documents that enhances the journey, the email templates, the questionnaires, the potential automation.
This is all for you and inside, like your understanding of your process. And then there's so much we can do for the client experience and the client journey and their understanding throughout as well. But those things can, of course, be worked on in tandem, but they really don't have to be, because it comes from you and your clarity, like we talked about. That's going to speak more to the client than anything you're sending them digitally.
Yeah. And when you're starting with us on those executive partnerships and you're making commitments with us for the year, realistically, that first 2-hour call with me is a kickoff alignment, is me understanding where are you on your path in terms of either of delegation. Where are you on that timeline, or how close are you to it? And that defines how we close, how we price, what that process looks like, how far into the weeds. In the beginning is be very simple. Like we said, you don't need all the extra stuff. It makes you look good. Great. But you are the best vessel. That clarification through you in that process is most important. Second step is the visuals. Third step is the automation.
Yep. And the last thing I'll say, even though I know I already said last thing, but the last thing I'll say is, for designers who have done a course before or bought a process before and didn't have the time to implement it, or it didn't fully work for them and they never had the, time or capacity to customize it and make it all fit. This isn't that. This is Shayna walking hand in hand with you, putting it in place, and then actually walking the walk and selling that first job for you so that you have seen it work. You have the trust. You have a partnership to tweak as you go. It will feel different and it'll perform differently at the end as well.
Yeah. And listen, if you have tools because you purchased a program and there's value to that, we're going to work from those tools. I just had a coaching call yesterday where a client who's staging bought this whole big tool, and within 1 hour, because of a foundation, we deleted a huge chunk of what was going on and we totally edited everything, but it did expedite us. Same thing on Evelyn's side. There are programs out there that sell so many templates. It's an overwhelm of templates and emails. Right. It's just like, if you're busy, a program is not for you because you're not going to have the time to go through it. Way better to work one-on-one with someone who can execute the deliverables and get you on board.
But we can certainly leverage what you have and take a shortcut. Well, who doesn't want a shortcut if it works and if it goes to the right place?
Yeah. I would say that's where we're really big believers in. If you bought something and there's value to it, we're like, whoa, we're going to dive into that and edit from there. You've already paid for it. I would say, if you were questioning program over finding and executing executive partnership, if you have limited time, go for executing partnership, because your money that you would pay into a program that has all these templates is actually probably going to be a lesser investment to just have someone executing also inside the templates that we have, just because they're known templates to us as well. But if you have the time, programs are great. There's always value from all of them, but go through those programs with the understanding that that program was developed for the owner who's selling it. And every owner is a different creature. We are not robots of the same. That process that is being sold to you is what works specifically for them. So don't judge yourself if for whatever reason it's not working. It's likely because you have different strengths and weaknesses, and that process was developed around that person's strength and weakness. Or it's also a sale, Like, let's be real about it. And it may be simplified. And this is where I think the pricing model situation also has come to in these percentage-based fee calculators, all these more simplified approaches. I kind of believe because in a program, it's easier to teach, like they are easier to close, easier to learn, faster to implement. So I do think that's probably why also a lot of people start that way. But all the other value inside of that program is immense, in terms of templates and emails and things like that. So we take value of what we need, and then we give you the gaps where we feel like the misses are.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with anything is easier than starting with nothing. And if you come to us not having done a program before, don't worry. We have all of those spreadsheets and outlines and contract templates ready for you so that we can get this implemented into your business and get you controlling your profitability right away.
As we wrap up today's episode, we hope you're feeling more confident to price and close your jobs. Remember, the right approach is all about the numbers and setting boundaries, protecting your time, and designing a business that truly fits your vision and your life.
If you consistently find yourself feeling like the work you're putting in is just not reflected in your bank account, hopefully this episode clarified that the way you're pricing your jobs right now is not working. So let's fix it. Work with Shayna to implement this hybrid pricing model customized to your process, to strengthen your sales flow and to help you stop reinventing the wheel every time a lead comes through.
I'm working with designers just like you every single day. You might be surprised how quickly we can make these changes. On average, all we need is about 12 hours together to put the foundation in place, control your profitability, and permanently solve this in your business once and for all. If you'd like more tips, resources, and inspiration to help you master your pricing and business strategy, please be sure to join our email list at fordesignerbusiness.com/subscribe.
And if you're ready for a real conversation about your business, whether you have questions about pricing, want to map out your next move, or just need to talk things through with someone who gets it, we're here for you. You can set up a free call with us at fordesignerbusiness.com or grab the link from the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on For Designer Business. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please help us grow this community by rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you listen. And don't forget, we're rooting for you as you create the business and the life you've always wanted. Until next time, keep designing and keep dreaming.